We're with Coach Boynton as a week of home games for the Cowboys continue, with West Virginia rolling into town. And, Coach, you've been right there. The last two games, you had a 10-point lead at K-State. You were up 17 at TCU. So what carries over? What can you build upon the last two games?
Well, what we've got to learn is how to finish. And with young guys and with a bunch of guys who haven't played together, who also haven't found success recently, there's a little bit of doubt that creeps in when it gets close again. And that's a process that we're fighting ourselves to get through. But I've got confidence that, with each game, that experience and that ability to draw back on what happened before grows and allows you to figure out how to be a little bit better for a little bit longer. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about competitive stamina now, right? We're not talking about preparation. We're not talking about, we are talking about execution in some instances, but really it's about two things. The will to say, we are getting this done, inside the group, the huddles, and understanding that we have to go make the plays. But also, it's just a competitive stamina to take a 17-point lead and make sure it's not 4 at halftime. They may make a run, but it's got to be 6-0, not 14-0, because every team in this league is capable of making a run. And for us, we got to find a way to limit the length of those runs as best as possible.
You're talking about the competitive stamina, and at the end of games, it always seems like it's the details. This is a young team that may or may not be familiar with the details. So what are one or two teaching points as far as the end of games go that you're really emphasizing so that they can learn how to close?
Just the communication internally on the court. There were 3 or 4 possessions where we were supposed to switch a screening situation to keep a bigger guy at the basket. Even though we're playing smaller and naturally we don't have as much size on the floor all the time as we did maybe back in December. But there were opportunities to stop ourselves from being at a disadvantage at the basket that we didn't execute. The other part is rebounding. Rebounding was a major emphasis going into the game, and we did a pretty good job in the first half, but that sustainability and the determination to finish those possessions late in the second half. We had 2 fouls on rebounding, and we gave up 2 offensive rebounds that led to baskets for those guys in really, really critical moments where if you got to stop, you give yourself a chance to run some clock, get a good shot, and put some real pressure on them.
Javon Small had his best stat line in conference play in the game against TCU. What was different?
Well, I think he's just getting more accustomed to how teams have defended him, getting more accustomed to being able to find his spots to look for scoring opportunities, and also trying to balance that with getting shots for Bryce Thompson, for Eric Daly, who's come along really, really strong here lately, and our shooters, John Michael Wright and Jarris Hicklin, who both shot the ball much better here in the last couple of weeks.
Have you been pleased with what you've seen 2 games into your 4-guard lineup as you've gone smaller with your starting group?
Yeah, rebound is certainly something we have to continue to address. It's a place where we're going to be exposed a little bit more. We just have to find a way to be tougher through those times where we do have that lineup out there, so that 2 things can happen. One, if your defensive rebound, because you're smaller and quicker, you can get more opportunities in transition. But also it stops the other team from feeling like that's the way they can get back in the game, is by just getting a shot up on the rim. So I like what we've done from a schematic standpoint defensively. I like the space it gives us on the offensive end, but we have to be tougher on the glass.
And someone who's benefited from all of this is John Michael Wright, not only just Javon Small, but John Michael Wright. He had another big game against TCU. And the thing is, he was sort of on the fringe of the rotation prior to that. What's it say about him that he's been able to jump right back in to an increased role and, for the most part, really thrive? Because it was a pretty significant difference for him.
Well, it goes to the point of the experience matters, right? Having been able to draw back on the things that he's done in his previous years. This is his 5th year in college basketball. He's been through ups and downs. He scored a lot of points. He's been through losing streaks. He's been through winning streaks. And just understanding how to stay the course, not to get too down when things weren't going well. And at this point, when he's doing better, not to get too high, but be able to keep a level mindset, understand how to prepare for the next game, how to have a really good practice today, and put himself in a position where he can do what he does best, which is make shots when he has an opportunity to do so.
This weekend, we'll remember the 10, and I guess one thing that is a part of that as you think about what's been a tough conference schedule, that brings perspective to everything in a hurry.
Absolutely.
When we come to this weekend, regardless of the wins and losses, that brings a real-life perspective to things really fast.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question this is the most important week of our season every year. And, a lot of people say, well, get into the tournament or, the conference play or whatever. No, the promise that we kept to those families to remember their loved ones and people who impacted our program on a daily basis back in the early 2000s is critically important. And so we'll, again, make sure our players understand the gravity of the moment of having those families here with us, but also not to take for granted the opportunity we get to live and do something we love every day, because some people don't have that opportunity for something that was outside of their hands. So we're certainly thankful to represent this program, but on Saturday, we're more thankful to represent those families and those people.
As the guys learn about it, what are the conversations like? What do they say? You have always, guys come and go. What are those conversations like as they learn about what happened? And it's been now some period of time, but what do they say?
Well, now we're getting to the stage where very few of the guys were even alive when this happened.
Yeah.
And so it's even more important that we tell the actual story, right? Not just have the game and go over to the memorial, but tell the story and let them understand why part of the reason we do what we do now in terms of the way we travel is because of an unfortunate event that happened before, and that when those folks are around, because many of them this weekend will come by practice, that we put our arms around them and tell them we appreciate them. We appreciate them for continuing to support a program that very easily they could say, you know what, that's a sore eye and a tough spot in my heart. I can't do that. But for them to continue to embrace this program and love on us, in the way that we need in difficult moments, again, to the perspective question, really, really critical, but also equally important that we make sure our guys understand the value of this opportunity that we have to play basketball.
And that opportunity Saturday will be against a West Virginia team that struggled in the non-conference, added some players, and suddenly, obviously, they are a much different team. They've won at home against Texas and most notably last Saturday against Kansas. So is it safe to say that the additions have made a big impact for them?
Yeah, they got really good players. The two-time transfer, Raekwon Battle, really, really big-time scorer. Jesse Edwards, who's been out for a while, but I expect to play, gives them an interior scoring presence. Quinn Slazinski, a really, really skilled forward. Kurt Kriesel, who led the Pac-12 in assists last year. So they've put together some really, really nice pieces that have given them an opportunity to kind of stay afloat for now, but also feel like they could make a move at any point in this league. So we got to come ready to play on Saturday.
Style-wise, do they look like the previous West Virginia teams, or are they different?
Very different, actually. Still very physically imposing, but they don't play with a force that will remind you of Coach Huggins' teams. They're much more skilled offensively, much more balanced in terms of the way they can score. And rebounding still will be an important piece, but that was always the first thing that came to your mind is if we don't grab a rebound, we have no chance to win this game. Well, now you got to defend them at the three-point line a little bit more. You got to figure out how you're going to defend them ball screens because they play that way a lot more. And then, obviously, offensively, you got to be able to take care of the basketball against them still.
It's Cowboys in West Virginia on Saturday at 1 in Gallagher-Iba Arena, and we'll see you there.